Let's talk about phrases. First, a phrase is a group of words. It's not a sentence. Now, there are all kinds of phrases, like nominal phrases. Nom means name, as in noun. Rocks that are hard, or fish in the brook, or blue flowers from the garden. A group of words acting like a single noun. But the 5 phrase types I'd like you to remember, the ones that have the potential to very quickly improve the maturity of your writing are gerund phrases, participle or participial phrases, absolute phrases, appositive phrases, and prepositional phrases. First up, gerund phrases. Now, a gerund is a verb that becomes a noun when ing gets attached to the end of it. The word jump is a verb, but jumping is a noun. The thing of doing jumps. Is a to-be verb, but being, the state of being, becomes a noun. So for an example of a gerund phrase, consider the sentence, swimming in the ocean is fun. Is the verb of the sentence, so something has to be doing that verb, the subject. That subject is the gerund swimming, and the prepositional phrase attached to it makes the whole gerund phrase function like one big noun. The thing of swimming in the ocean is or does something. Next up, participle or participial phrases. Participle phrases usually contain a gerund phrase. The difference, though, is that the gerund is not doing or being done to by a verb. Instead, in a participle phrase, the gerund is describing the subject of the sentence. In other words, a gerund behaves like a noun, while a participle phrase behaves like an adjective. Consider this sentence. First, at the core, there's an independent clause. Tom went to school. Now we'll attach a participle phrase to describe what kind of Tom went to school. A treading carefully Tom. Be sure to offset the participle phrase with a comma, by the way. That's how these work. Whether the participle comes before the core clause or after it, like this. Tom went to school, treading carefully. One more thing. As I said, participle phrases are often made of gerunds, but not always. A participle can also be made from a past tense verb behaving like the gerund to describe the subject. So, considering our core clause from earlier, Tom went to school, we can write something like this to describe what kind of Tom we have. A worried about tests Tom. And just as before, this past tense verb participle can follow the clause as well with a comma separating it from the clause. Tom went to school, worried about his test. Okay, now the absolute phrase. An absolute phrase contains a participle phrase. The 2 differences are that 1, there's an extra word doing that participle, and 2, the absolute phrase does not describe the subject of the sentence the way the participle did. Instead, the absolute phrase describes the situation in which the core sentence takes place. Like participles, absolute phrases function like adjectives, but rather than describing a noun, they describe the scene, and as a result are very powerful when writing descriptive prose. Let's start with the participle we had before, worried about the test. But this time, let's include who or what is worried about the test at the beginning of the phrase. The children. So, in a state where the children are worried about the test, something happens in connection. A dark cloud seemed to hang over the school. The subject of our sentence is cloud, but the children worried about the test does not describe the cloud. It merely sets the stage for the school's somber mood. So it's functioning like an adjective, but describing the atmosphere. And once again, we can write these in reverse order, the same as we did with participle phrases, offsetting them from the independent clause with a comma. A dark cloud seemed to hang over the school. The children worried about their test. Now there is one little cheat to allow absolute phrases to describe the subject similar to the way participle phrases work. What you do is pick an aspect of the subject and use that as the noun at the beginning of the phrase. You then describe that aspect to set the stage for the sentence. Muscles bulging, the boxer looked like an enraged beast, or, with the phrase at the end, the boxer looked terrifying, his eyes seeming to glow red. By highlighting the muscles or eyes or fists of the subject, you can achieve some very descriptive details efficiently, one of the main appeals of these phrases. Now, appositive phrases. An appositive is a noun or nominal phrase that essentially gives another name to a different noun in the sentence. So you take a sentence like, Tom sat on a chair in his office, and consider another noun that gives Tom an additional identity. He's a doctor. You then stick that noun next to Tom and separate it from the rest of the sentence with commas like mini parentheses. Tom, who? The doctor. Then resume. Did what? Sat on a chair in his office. The doctor gives another name for Tom. Or this sentence. Working was too important to ignore. Insert another name for working now. The thing he liked to do least. Working, the thing he liked to do least, was too important to ignore. It's an advanced way to include additional detail in your sentences. Now, I told you we were going to learn 5 phrases and not 4, but we already know what prepositional phrases are, and I'm sure you've noticed that we've already been using them. Going back to the beginning, swimming in the ocean relies on in the ocean, a prepositional phrase. So we're done.